Story 1. My biggest regret. My fiancée left after my bachelor party mistake and I just want her back. Part 1. 5 years ago I, Walt, male, 28, made a choice that totally fucked up my life. I had a lot going for me. At the time I was the new guy at my firm. I was an architect, mostly subdivisions, and really enjoyed it. I had a long-term girlfriend of 3 years, Emily, female, 29 now, 24 back then, that I had recently become engaged to. I really thought nothing could derail me. After Emily said yes, we began to plan the wedding. We were not up for the big wedding thing. We agreed we would have an elopement to a coastal city. San Diego became the plan. Parents' siblings were welcome to come if they wanted, but basically we were just booking a honeymoon and getting married while we were there. Since this whole trip was going to be, relatively speaking, inexpensive, we decided to splurge on pre-wedding activities. Now, neither of us wanted traditional bachelorette parties. We agreed we would scratch off bucket list items. Emily wanted to swim with sharks, and booked herself one of those cage dive excursions. Her and her best friend Maggie went to Florida for a long weekend and did just that. Mine was quite a bit more. I had always wanted to visit Thailand. It was one of those dumb things I got fascinated with as a 10-year-old and swore I was going to go. Emily actually encouraged me, pointing out that I literally brought up Thailand on our first date. We were 6 months into our engagement when the time came for me and my best friend, Jorge, to leave on the trip. For the first 3 days everything was great. We were enjoying beaches, visiting temples, and drinking a lot. On that third night though, Jorge got absolutely smashed drunk. I was a little pissed about this and tried to slow him down. The next day we were supposed to go on a jungle excursion. It was one of the things I was most looking forward to, so I had been pacing myself so I could enjoy the trek. The next morning Jorge has a world-class hangover, refuses to get up at all, and says we can book an excursion tomorrow. My thought was, fuck that, I'm going today. I had seen ads for a few places that did these. I went out to get some breakfast and spotted a guy on the side of the road offering the jungle excursion cheaply. He had a Jeep and when he noticed me looking at his sign, moved in with a hard sell. Honestly, it did look a little shady, but the guy spoke English so well it gave me a false sense of security. I decided to go with this guy. I get in and for a while it's actually pretty fun. He pulls off the main road on these off-road paths. I have no idea where we are going. We end up deep down these roads. I'm enjoying it for the most part though. Then everything went sideways. We stopped in this small clearing, and I was checking some things out, when out of nowhere local law enforcement pulled up. I don't know what's being said, I can only pick out a word here and a word there. They start going through the guy's Jeep and find a rather large quantity of methamphetamine. I am shitting a brick at this point. These cops take us both into their small, middle-of-nowhere station. This is when I come to realization that this motherfucker has taken me into Cambodia. I don't have my ID or passport on me, they are back in the room. These cops are not listening to anything and I have no idea what my guide is telling them. I was freaking out but also thought, it'll be okay, Jorge will realize I'm gone, look into where I am. I'm not going to go into what the next 4.5 years were like, but hell is an easy comparison. I'll just leave it at a Cambodian jail, which isn't the most hospitable environment. It took 5 months of sitting in that cell before I even saw a judge. The judicial system there is so backlogged, and the few public defenders that exist are basically in the large cities only. During this whole time I was never allowed to contact anyone on the outside. My first time in front of the judge they didn't have an interpreter and it got postponed another 5 months. I finally had that pre-trial hearing, entered a plea, then it was another 14 months before my actual hearing. When I finally had my hearing, the judge was very fair and dismissed my charges on time served, only for the prosecutor to appeal the dismissal. This put me back into custody for another 28 months. This was the most devastating moment of my life, to think I was out and end up still in for that long. During this time, after no one came for me, I realized they all thought I was dead. I had gone missing. Jorge had no idea where I was. I had called back home the morning I was arrested and left messages, but they only knew I was going on a jungle excursion. My parents, my fiancé, I missed them so much. There were plenty of days I was hoping one of the other inmates or a rough guard would just take me out already, especially after the first year when I became more tolerant of the food and water. Finally, after 52 months in captivity I was released. I had nothing to my name and was in a country I wasn't supposed to be in. I contacted the embassy, and they did have a missing persons file for me. They helped me contact home. I attempted to contact my fiancé but a guy named Mitch answered and he did not know Emily, so I figured she must have changed her number at some point. I called my mother. She was absolutely frantic. She grabbed my father and I told her my entire tale. I kept asking about Emily and my mother kept deflecting. She wanted to get started immediately getting me home, and said we would talk about everything when I got back to the US. It took a little while to make this happen. My parents luckily had my original passport and ID, which made the process somewhat faster. During that time they sent me money and I was able to get a hotel. My parents were very adamant I not try to contact Emily during this time and to wait until we got back. I obviously started to assume she had moved on and was with someone else, which was heartbreaking. I had held out hope during my imprisonment that she would not, but with the way my parents were acting I assumed that was the case. Even so, I wanted to contact her immediately, before anything else. I didn't want to talk about my time there. I didn't want to talk about what they did trying to find me, or know anything about anyone else. I just wanted my fiancée. My parents sat me down and handed me a save-the-date card. It was Emily and some tall handsome guy I'd never seen before. She was engaged. I broke down. It wasn't unexpected, but the feelings were still there. I asked my parents if they had kept in touch with her beyond just being wedding guest worthy. They said yes, they've actually been a huge part of each other's lives these last few years. I was a little shocked. I know they liked Emily, but with me gone I had somewhat expected them to drift apart and not get closer. I decided to ask, so how close are you guys now? My mother responded, very. Her father passed away a year ago and your dad has agreed to walk her down the aisle. That hurt. It shouldn't, but it did. Why you? Was all I could say. My mom got emotional, started going on about how they all thought I was gone, that a cartel or something got me, that they looked so hard and so long. They had a whole memorial service for me. I snapped a little, I don't care about that right now. What are you not telling me? My mother took that tablet and flipped a few photos. She then handed it back to me. There was a whole group photo. My parents, Emily, her fiancé, her mom, my sister, my brother, Emily's brother, Jorge, other friends and kids. But at the center of the table was a boy sitting behind a birthday cake. The decorations read, "Happy 4th birthday." He was smiling big. I just looked at my parents. My mother looked at me and said, "That's your son, Paul Walter Ryan." Part 2. In the 2 weeks since I got back home it simultaneously feels like so much has happened, and that virtually nothing has happened. I have been largely brought up to speed on all that has happened on this side of the world. When Jorge finally got up out of bed that day 5 years ago he tried to call me. After having no success, the officers confiscated my phone immediately upon arrest. I never saw it again. He decided to just go about his day, assuming I was enjoying my excursion. It wasn't until it was well past dark that he started to get concerned. He called back home to see if anyone else had heard from me. The next morning my family and fiancé were blowing up his phone wondering if I had come back yet. That's when he began venturing out to all the excursion places. They all reported that they had not seen me. He began to panic and alerted everyone back home. He went to the authorities at this point. My parents, brother and fiancé all made the trip to join him. They spent a month canvassing the area before they had to go back. My parents made another trip to Thailand to try and find me, but again turned up nothing. Over the next year and a half they were a constant reminder to the Thai officials of my disappearance. Unfortunately, no one thought to look in Cambodia. Meanwhile, my fiancée Emily came to the realization she was pregnant. On the day I left for Thailand, she was unknowingly around 10 weeks. I can only imagine how hard it was on her. I'm missing, she's pregnant with my child. I wish I had never gone. My parents told me Emily really leaned on them, and they were happy to help. Over the years they've just grown closer and closer. Her parents were there and supportive, but they are much older than mine and not in as good of health. My mom ended up taking Emily to a lot of her OB appointments. She was there in the delivery room along with Emily's mom. It was apparently very stressful as Paul was born at just 34 weeks. Luckily he showed no signs of health problems and they just kept him under heightened observation initially. My parents told me they needed this. The anguish of not knowing what happened to me was very hard, and the birth of their grandson provided a much-needed respite from the grief. They keep telling me how sorry they are, but they didn't do anything wrong. I guess it's just guilt now that they know I was out there, and they failed to find me. Jorge has been by to see me. He has apologized far too many times. He's gotten married since the trip, and has 2 kids now. He seems nervous around me, and I guess that's fair. I do hold some resentment towards him. It's not his fault, but the feeling is there anyway. My brother and sister have marched on with life. My brother has kids now, and my sister is married. I missed all of this. I could probably get over all of that, but losing my fiancé and missing out on 4 years with my son, it's been too much. My parents have set me up with a therapist. I went to the first session but have no idea what to talk about. I was wrongfully incarcerated for 5 years, beaten at times, starved at times. Plenty of PTSD. My whole family thought I was dead, so much so they had a memorial service for me 3 years to the day of my disappearance. I was supposed to marry the love of my life, and she is now engaged to someone else. Then to top it all off, I have a 4-year-old son, who has been raised by my replacement since he was 18 months old. Paul only knows this guy as Dad, he calls him Dad, and now here I am, back from the dead to fuck up everyone else's perfect little lives. I'm ranting though. It's just too much to unpack. I still haven't directly spoken to Emily. My father went to her house the day after my return. He sat her and her fiancé, Kevin, male, 34, down, told them I had been found. She began to tear up. She thought he was saying my body had been recovered. When he corrected her, she had a complete breakdown. Her fiancé comforted her. My dad said she was just silent afterwards. I tried texting her. I got no response for a whole day, then just a "I'm so sorry, I just can't right now." I haven't asked anyone about her fiancé, other than I know she's been engaged for about 2 months, and the wedding is supposed to be in 6. No one has volunteered any information at this point. We were supposed to all meet at the park this past weekend. My resurgence has thrown the harmony out of whack and I can tell everyone is a little off. My mother typically watches Paul while Emily and Kevin are at work. A lot of time it's at her house, but since I showed up it's been exclusively over at Emily's. I hear they are preparing him to meet me. He is aware I'm his father. My pictures are all over at my parents' house. Emily has apparently always had a picture of me up in Paul's room. I'm a shell of the guy in the picture, but I guess at least I kinda look like that still. He won't be totally blindsided. My parents and I arrived at the park first. When we saw their car pull up, only Kevin and Paul got out. Emily was not with them. Paul ran up to my dad first and gave him a big hug. He saw me and kind of retreated to my mom, then over to Kevin. I could tell he was nervous. I mean shit, so was I, and I'm not 4 years old. The other adults tried to say something to get us to talk or embrace or something. I told them to let it go, let him go play. He perked up and ran off to the playground. Kevin came up and stuck his hand out. We shook, and he said, "Sorry, Emily, couldn't today." We were about out the door and she broke down, told me she wasn't ready. I just said, "I understand." I went over to the playground to try and bond in some way. Turns out Paul is big into superheroes. He pretended to be Spider-Man and I had to be Rhino. I chased him all over the playground and let him web me up. He laughed and smiled. When the food was ready I was happy to see he liked his hot dogs the same as me. Ketchup on one side, mustard on the other, relish on top. I thought maybe this won't be so hard. Then he called Kevin Dad. I shouldn't have been surprised by this. He's been in this kid's life for 2.5 years. He is marrying his mom. They all live in the same house. That all said, it was like a knife in the heart. I began to actually tear up. I excused myself for a moment and said I was going over to the Gross Park bathroom. When I came out after a minute, Kevin was waiting. I could see my parents across the way watching Paul. I felt instantly awkward. The last thing I wanted right now was a heart-to-heart with Kevin. He was taller than me, more built than me, and had gotten to have the life I was supposed to have. He just said, "Can we talk?" I said, "Yeah, man, what's on your mind?" Kevin began. "Look, I'm sorry for what happened to you. It's a bad deal all around. I just wanted to talk because I'm worried about Emily and Paul. Emily more than him. She hasn't been herself, which I can appreciate to some degree. It took a long time for her to get over you. I'm the first person she dated after your incident. She cried the first time we kissed because it was different. I want you to have a relationship with your son. He's little, he's resilient. I had 2 dads growing up. I know he will be fine. I don't know how fine her or you will be if this goes too fast, and from a selfish standpoint I don't want anything disrupting our life or our engagement. I love her, and want what's best. I'd like you two to take it slow and process everything before you meet. I made an appointment for her to see a counselor. I'd appreciate it if you could respect that and not push her or reach out to her. Let her figure things out on her own first." I was pissed listening to him, pretentious ass, but fuck, he had some points. I don't want to rip open all these old wounds. I ended up just saying, "Yeah man, I can do that," and walked off to join my parents and Paul. Kevin went into the gross bathroom. When he came back over he said him and Paul were going to head out. Paul gave everyone hugs, including me. I was surprised, but pleasantly. Then he called me Rhino and ran off to Kevin. As they left I heard him say, "Dad, can we get a cookie cake on the way home?" Ugh, he's Dad, I'm Rhino, and this just fucking sucks. Part 3. We finally met. We started by texting a bit, but it felt so impersonal the conversation stayed at a surface level. The deepest we really got was talking about Paul and me briefly divulging what Cambodian prison was like. Over the 3 weeks between our first text exchange and our meetup we only texted maybe 5 times, and each time it started to get into heavy subjects one of us would end the conversation. During that time though I did spend more time with Paul. My mother began watching him at her house again and that gave us time to bond. I even had some one-on-one time with him when we went to get ice cream together one day. It's amazing how resilient kids are, he just goes with the flow of everything. He still calls me Rhino, but maybe I'll get the dad title soon. One day this past week, when Kevin came by to pick up Paul, he asked to talk again. This time he had a job offer for me, which made me get pissed. Then he elaborated that it wasn't really an offer but more of a lead. His brother owns a construction company and is looking for an estimator. Kevin told his brother I was once an architect and his brother said he'd give me an interview if I was interested. He left his brother's card with me. I really want to hate Kevin, but he does actually seem to be a genuinely nice person, which also pisses me off. His self-deprecating sense of humor grows on you fast, and this is just in 5 to 10 minute interactions with him. But at the same time, fuck that guy. I talked to Emily via text this past Friday. We agreed to meet the next day for lunch. I suggested this Italian place that had been our place, but she got a little upset about this and I thought she was going to cancel. Instead we pivoted to Applebee's. Seeing her in person I can't even describe. She was just as beautiful as ever. The hello hug caused a shiver through my spine. I didn't want to let go, and may have lingered for just a second, but also didn't want to make it weird. We exchanged pleasantries and small talk through the ordering, and at that point the conversation took the first serious turn since my return, and it stayed that way for the next hour as we talked. She told me how hard it was to deal with my death. She was pregnant and grieving, and a lot of days didn't want to carry on. It hurt so bad to listen to what she was going through. She told me she felt so alone anytime she was in our apartment that she spent most nights staying at her parents' or mine. She kept hoping that every time the phone rang it would be someone with news about me, and then began to hope it wasn't, because as time went on it became more likely that it would be a call that they found my body. She told me about how great my parents, and to a lesser degree my siblings, had been to her. My sister-in-law and her even had slightly overlapping pregnancies, so it was fun to have someone to talk to about it. It was after Paul's first birthday that my parents of all people talked to her about getting back out there. She admitted she was really only spending time with her parents, or my sister-in-law and by extension my brother. She said she even fell off hanging out with her best friend. Emily told me it was fear. She never wanted to be away from Paul. If I could disappear in an instant, then that means anyone could. She wouldn't be able to live without him. After this intervention, she realized she was living like a widow and not a 25-year-old woman. She began hanging out with her friends again, letting others watch Paul occasionally so she could go out. It was 2 months into her attempts at living life that she ran into Kevin. They were in a Starbucks. She was fumbling trying to get her phone out while holding Paul. When suddenly this tall handsome fucker, my words, comes up and scans his phone, buying her coffee and muffin. They strike up a conversation while waiting. When her order gets called, he grabs it and hands it to her along with a business card with his cell number on it. Kevin owns a screen printing shop. Tell her, no pressure, but I'd like to get to know you better. Then they part ways. She called him the next day. 4 months later she introduced Paul to him. A year later they moved in with him and a few months ago they got engaged. This is where I said my piece. I told her I still loved her, that it's impossibly hard to see her with someone else. The idea of getting back to her was one of the few things that kept me going when I was locked away. She began to cry, and I reached out and took her hand. I asked if she was sure, or if there was any way we could try again. In hindsight I feel like this was a dick move, but at the time I needed to know. She shook her head, looked up at me and said, I love you, I never stopped, but I love Kevin too, and I'm marrying him. It's not fair, I know it's not fair, you didn't do anything wrong, but I had to move on. I spent years thinking you had died. When you came back I was so happy, but also so guilty. I cut her off there. You have nothing to feel guilty about, I fucked up and cost myself everything. I always knew you'd likely move on, and I don't fault you for that. I was gone. There was no reason for you to believe I was coming back, but I did dream that I'd find my way back and you'd be there when I returned. I realized that was unrealistic. I'm sorry for putting you in this position now. She said, it's okay, I knew this was coming eventually. We just kind of stopped talking at that point. Sat there just drinking our drinks. After a few minutes that seemed like eternity, she said, how do you want to move forward when it comes to Paul? I told her, I love him already and want to be in his life." She replied, "I'm so happy about that. I always told him about you. I didn't want him to think he was abandoned." I said, "He is the one bright spot in this whole situation." From there she told me that Kevin had planned to adopt him once they were married but wouldn't know that I have returned. I am listed on the birth certificate as the father, although I think I'll meet with a lawyer just to make sure everything is in place from a legal standpoint. We made some plans to meet together later in the week with Paul. Let him have fun with all of his parents at the same time. She also encouraged me to do more one-on-one with him. At the end we hugged one more time and parted ways. When I got back to my parents' house and in my room, I broke down. The finality of it all was just too much. After I recovered, I decided I was not going to wallow in my grief anymore. I needed to swallow some pride and get on track to do something with myself. The next day I called Kevin's brother and did an interview that day. He hired me. This is the first step towards moving on. Part 4. Holy shit, you're not gonna believe what I'm about to tell you. These last 6 months have been nothing short of absolutely fucking crazy, but in a good way. After my first initial face-to-face with Emily, I decided I needed to move on with my life, and I ended up getting hired to be an estimator for Kevin's brother Kyle's, male, 36 construction company. It was going well, and at about the 2-month mark Kyle, knowing I was an architect, started asking me to design some of his custom builds and would compare them to the usual architect he was using. He liked mine better, and while I still work as an estimator still, I am now solely designing the custom homes for Kyle, and he gave me a huge raise. This allowed me to get my own apartment, and I'm thankful to say I am no longer living in my parents' house. Emily and Kevin's wedding plans progressed with only one major change. My father was no longer walking her down the aisle, as everyone felt it was inappropriate given my return. Her much older brother was going to take that role now. Emily was an unplanned baby, so her brother is 16 years older than her. After our initial lunch, I saw Emily a lot more often. We were making it a point to do something all together with Paul at least once a week. Kevin was there as well, but they kept the couple behavior to a minimum. It was fun. I especially enjoyed getting to talk to Emily and just be around her. After a month of this, back-to-school season hit. I guess in the screen printing industry this is the busy season. Which I guess makes sense with fall sports, staff shirts, clubs, Greek life. Kevin has contracts with all the school districts and is used heavily by the local colleges in the area. He became swamped at this time, which led to Emily, Paul, and I spending a lot more time, just the three of us. Over the months of this we became a lot closer. Hello side hugs became lingering full front hugs. Emily and I would talk about all sorts of things. It kind of reminded me of when we were first dating. After a couple of months Kevin began joining us all again. This didn't dissuade Emily and I from rebuilding our friendship. And then the most amazing thing happened. Paul started calling me Dad. I literally teared up like the first 10 times he did this. Life went on for the next couple of months. It was a week before the wedding. I was not going to attend, my parents were as guests only. That weekend they decided to have semi-combined bachelor parties. Each was going out to dinner with friends, then friends activity, her karaoke, him top golf, then they'd all meet up at a bar or club around 11 p.m. I wasn't involved in any of this and had no idea which place they were going to end at. I decided I was going out that night instead of just sitting in my apartment being a dud. It was a hard night for me as it was another reminder that I had lost her to someone else. No matter how good of a dude he was, I still hated it. It was around 10:30 that night. I had a good buzz and was planning on getting an Uber home when Emily and her bachelorette crew walked in. I kind of hid in the crowd at first, not wanting to butt into her night, but she spotted me. Emily came over and we began to talk. It was a little bit flirty. A song she loved came on and she began to dance, then dance on me. I joined in and we were laughing and having fun. As the song ended she kind of stumbled into me. I caught her and we looked at each other. Our lips moved in close and we almost kissed when she pulled back. We laughed it off and moved to the bar to get a drink. It was probably a good thing we didn't kiss because about 2 minutes later Kevin came walking up. He was trying to be his usual self but seemed a little off. They kissed, and I began to feel like the third wheel, so I went ahead and ordered that Uber and headed home. The next day I'm a little hungover and slept pretty heavily on my lazy Sunday. It was midday and I heard someone try to open my door. It was locked and they began knocking heavily. I ran over and opened the door. It was Emily. She lunged into my arms and kissed me. It was the sweetest feeling I have ever felt. Confusing, but sweet. I asked her what was going on. She said, Kevin came to me this morning and started asking some hard questions. I don't want to go into it, I promise I'll tell you everything one day, but I'm in no place to do so now. We decided to end things. I admitted my feelings were still strong for you, He said he understood. That it hurt but that he knew. He said we both deserve to be happy, and he is going to step away. I called your parents, they are good at keeping Paul a bit longer. I love you and want to be with you, and I'm suspecting you feel the same way. I told her that was all I ever wanted. It's been a whirlwind. She had 2 bags packed for her and Paul and they moved in with me that same day. The next day my father went to visit Kevin. He told me Kevin looked a little hungover and had taken the day off. They had a talk and my dad tried to be as empathetic as he could. He just wanted to check on him as Kevin had been a large part of their lives over the past few years. He asked Kevin what he was going to do. He said beyond trying to get some deposits back he had no idea. My father offered to refund him his money and take over the reservations. He didn't ask why, my father thinks he knew. While this was going on I had to go into work and face Kyle. He called me into the office upon my arrival. Kyle had me sit and began, "Just let me say my business. I'm angry, my brother tells me to let it go and I will. I want to take that anger out on you but I'm not going to. My brother and I learned the hard lesson back in high school when it comes to revenge and swore we'd always be the bigger men going forward, but that's not a tale for now. I think it's best we part ways. My family needs time to heal. I won't leave you high and dry though. You get 1 week paid off here. In that time I want you to speak to an acquaintance of mine, Lee. Lee runs a construction company as well, and he says he will take you on at your current salary. It's commercial instead of residential but you'll do fine." I stood up and started to thank him but he cut me off. "This isn't for you, it's for Kev. Now go get your things and get up out of here." I contacted Lee the same day. He told me I could start in 2 weeks. Once my father came back and said he now had control of the wedding accommodations, Emily and I just looked at each other and knew we each wanted this. It wasn't the wedding we always wanted, we planned on getting married on a beach. It was Kevin that wanted the traditional wedding. In the end he was right though, we had an amazing time. Hori was my best man. She looked stunning in her dress. Getting me a tux rental on short notice was probably the biggest headache but that worked out too. Neither of us had huge friend or family groups but it was nice to enjoy celebrating with those that had supported us through all these dark times. It's been a month now since our wedding. I still can't believe it. Paul had a little trouble adjusting, he does miss Kevin, but he has seemed happier the last week. To be where I once was and be where I am now, I consider myself beyond lucky. Story 2. AITA for confronting my wife about her cheating on me after she got in a car accident. Me, male, 32, and my wife, female, 31, have been together for about 6 years and married for 2. We have recently been having some heated arguments here and there. I already posted about one of them and I don't want to beat that dead horse. Last night me and my wife had a long conversation about our last argument and we both agreed we need to change some ways of our thinking and some of our actions when angry. This morning was great. She let me know that she's covering one of her friend's shifts so she will be gone from 3 p.m. till they close at 10 p.m. She left to go to work at 2:30 and I ran some errands and saw my mom for a couple hours. I got home about 6 hours later and after I was home for a while I saw that her iPad was blowing up with texts. I'm not usually one to want to look through texts but I noticed that it was 10:15 and she hasn't texted me that she was on the way back yet. Her work always closes right on the dot. I saw that these texts and calls she was getting were from her ex from before we were together telling her he had so much fun, to be safe on the way home and to call him so they could talk on the way home. The following texts were asking if she was okay and if she needed him to come help with anything. She then called me and told me she was just leaving work and she got rear-ended but that the damage wasn't too bad, she was just shaken up. I was honestly more worried about her and wasn't focusing on the ex at this point. She told me she was about to leave to come home and that she doesn't need me to come get her. She got home pretty shaken up and she cried a bit and I consoled her, and after a couple of hours she calmed down and I started to think about what I saw. I brought it up and asked her if she was actually covering work for her friend, or if she was with him, and she immediately started crying and saying I was an asshole for accusing her of that after she got in an accident and that the person texting and calling wasn't her ex, it was a guy with the same name that she has been friends with for years who happened to run into her on her break. I have never heard of this guy. She's currently crying and I told her I was going to use the bathroom, hide and ask WTF I should do. Am I the asshole for bringing it up after the car accident? Story 3. My wife broke me. I, male, 33, and my wife, female, 33, have been together for more than 13 years. We started dating in college, have been living together for 8 years and have been married for 3 years. In many ways she is a supportive and caring wife, however. I feel I no longer love her. Even more, I resent her. Main point is, she needs me for almost everything. I am the center of her life and without me she can't function. It is a feeling of being caught and being pulled down, drowning in her little world and having to support her. The past 6 years, the point was mainly that I was taking on most of the chores at home and trying to fulfill her needs and not pushing my own. To put it into perspective, we work full-time. She has a standard 9 to 5 and I, well, 8 to 6, on a good day. We would come home, fix something for dinner, we would start to eat and, either she falls asleep during dinner or right after that. Mind you, that's somewhere 7 to 8 p.m. As there are some chores to do, I do them till 10 p.m., max. Then, I would like to do something for myself, but, miraculously, at that time she would wake up and need some quality time. Read, sit in front of the TV till past midnight, while she has most likely fallen asleep again. Why don't I go to bed myself or have some me time? Between the time I get up, go upstairs and get started on a hobby or go to sleep, she again would wake up and would be shouting for me to come down and help her get out of the sofa. Mind you, she isn't fat or obese, she is just without energy. My requests of going to bed together around 10 p.m., or having me do some more hobby, fitness, whatever, were not appreciated, as she would be alone. Me spending time with friends and family is also difficult. Why do you need to spend time on them? I don't need anyone else either. You are the most important one for me, so I should also be for you. Everyone else is heavily flawed. Everyone has flaws, we are human, everyone else is wrong or is annoying. She is perfect and always right. It is a mindset that I really dislike. Anyway, often it is her way or the highway. She can quite easily argue and is very stubborn, so I am often unable to convince her of anything else. Why did I marry her? She has her positive qualities. She has made me more assertive. She has supported me when I was down. She pushed my capabilities and limits and made me into the man I am today. I certainly grew thanks to her. Anyway, she convinced me to try for a child, the next project after a wedding that was spread over too much time due to COVID. I always indicated I didn't want children. They don't bring an added value to my life, but she wanted one. Her clock was ticking and peers were getting children. So we tried, FOMO, even went to the hospital, got a program running, had a miscarriage during summer 2023 and I was relieved, but some months later we were pregnant in a natural way. Kind of a miracle baby. Oh yes, another project. Furniture for the baby's room. Upgrade furniture master bedroom. Sure, why not? But I was done. I didn't have the energy left for her or for the life she wants. I had this feeling at the end of November 2023. She was 8 weeks pregnant. I felt torn with the situation. I went to a therapist, who indicated I was doing everything for her and not allowing myself to live the life I wanted. We then went together to the therapist and somehow it got completely redirected towards me not allowing her to do chores as I was a perfectionist. We went outside the office and her reaction. Oh, that was bullshit. I hope you found that money well spent. I took some more time to make a decision, but in the end decided to try it, as my wife told me that having another person in our family would spread her attention over 2 people and not just me, resulting in more free time for me. This sounded like a good idea. I spent more effort trying to rekindle the feeling of love. But each time I said I love you, the words were hollow and without meaning. Each time we kissed, I was thinking I wanted it to be over. Each time we hugged, I was staring blankly at the wall behind her. We are 1 year further now. The feeling I described above is a daily reminder of how I don't feel what I should be feeling. We now have a son of 6 months. Beautiful boy, surely an added value to my life. What was I thinking? But what kind of future am I giving him? I saw 2 other therapists in the past 2 months. One said I need to work on creating my personal boundaries. I told my wife, she immediately linked it with my work as she found I was doing too much overtime. The second therapist told me that my wife isn't taking my needs into consideration and that I am often sacrificing myself for her and now for the family. And either we start working together on the relationship or it will be a very hard exit. Friends who are aware of my personal life have already indicated several times that they can't believe how long I have been with her. Oh, and her promise that the baby would be taking her attention. I brought and picked up the baby from childcare. When we are both at home, I take the lead in taking care of the baby. She does her part in researching and making sure the correct clothes are in the house and ready to be worn by our son. But anyway, next to taking care of the baby, I still take care of her as mentioned above, and I reached my limit. Breaking points for me in the past months, she asked for my bucket list for 2025. I said 2 days and 1 evenings of hobby per month at least and 1 evening with friends. Too much for her. I need to be present for her and the baby. She started talking about upgrading the garage with more storage space. I was blocked. I told her she needs to come with the plan and I'll order and assemble it. She approached me several times. I asked her for a plan she wanted to discuss. I didn't tell her again multiple times, come with a plan. Finally, We ordered and built it. We have more storage space and it looks cleaner. Then she said she didn't like the placement of some drawers. I asked her 5 times if they weren't too high for her before installing. I completely shut down at that moment and was unable to do anything else that day. Baby is going to childcare. I picked him up with a red market bump on his head and the person in charge of the childcare indicated she didn't know about it. The wife was furious. I tried to meditate. It is a baby, getting bumps and scratches happens. Her reaction in short. No, a kid of 4.5 months doesn't get that. You're a terrible and bad father for not protecting your kid or wanting to figure it out. I am a terrible and bad father. She broke me then and there. The situation got resolved with the people from childcare. 1 week later I got an apology from her. After I asked about it. Since then she mentioned several times that I am a great father, but it doesn't matter. She broke me. And I am still looking for things to bind me to her. Even though I feel I am being pushed under by her and she doesn't even realize it. Why am I doing this? I don't know. I have several separated friends who are alone and/or in shitty situations. I don't know. Story 4. My girlfriend made out with her girlfriend. My girlfriend, female, 23, and I, male, 23, have been together for 4 years. I am still studying but she has a job and is comfortable. But this has caused a slight strain on our relationship. Nothing major, just that it became difficult for us to spend time with each other, which led to fights, which were always sorted immediately. A few months ago, during my end semester exams, my girlfriend decided to go out for some drinks with her new colleagues, all of them girls. She got drunk and started texting me at 3 a.m., while I was studying. I told her to enjoy her night and be safe. She told me her friends have decided to crash at a guy's place, a guy she doesn't even know about. I was pretty chill about it since I knew I wouldn't have to worry about her cheating on me. At 4:15 a.m., when I am just about to take a nap before waking up to study again, my girlfriend blows up my phone. I panicked and asked her what happened. She told me she's panicking because she made out with her friend. I first confirmed if it was just her friend and not the guy. She promised it wasn't the guy and I believe her. Now, my girlfriend and I haven't been too keen on making new friends as we're very content with the people in our lives, but when the time calls for it, we do socialize. My girlfriend has known her new colleagues for less than a month, and it's unlike her to go drinking to clubs and crashing out at another guy's house. So when she told me that she made out with her friend, I got a lil pissed but I told her I needed some space since my exam was in a day. But she got really defensive and stated that she has been through a lot in the past year because of the minuscule issues we used to have in our relationship and that she needed to have a little adventure. Now here's the thing, I personally don't have a problem with her drunk making out with a girl because it's not that big of a deal. My issue is that she was reckless and irresponsible in doing the things prior to the kiss, and then she got defensive when I called her out for it. She's planning on moving abroad in a few months for further studies. So after my exams, I broke up with her since I realized that if I have to maintain long distance, I'm going to have to trust my SO 100%, which I don't think I can because, if this is what she does when things are a bit tense between us while we're in the same city, I really don't want to find out what she'll do in another country with a similar situation. Should I have done something different? TL.dar, my girlfriend made out with her girlfriend. I decided to break up since she's moving abroad soon and I can't trust her. Edit. Thank you guys for the response. Those calling me homophobic, I just want to clarify that I do not perceive straight women to be a threat because there is a lack of romantic intent. The answer would have been a whole nother conversation had that person been bi. I do not condone what my ex had done, because she decided to do whatever, for the sake of excitement without confirming the preference of sex of the other person. Story 5. I cheated. Okay, let's get the bad part out of the way first. A few weeks ago, I, female, 24, had a brief affair with my boss, male, 40, at work. I admit it was a mistake. And when my husband, male, 38, found out about it while searching my phone while I was in the shower, he was devastated. He confronted me and there were a lot of tears and begging on my part to stay together because it was just all a big mistake. He left in a huff and went to his sister's. They've always had a close relationship and I'm sure she comforted him in his time of need. Fast forward to last Saturday. My husband came back. He was kind of cold to me and said the only reason he came back was that he missed our dog, a good boy, 7. I brushed that comment off as he was just still grieving about my infidelity. But then he told me I needed to sleep in the guest bedroom and the dog could sleep on our bed with him. He'll never cheat on me, he said as he went to bed. But then the next day things really went off the rails. My husband said he was divorcing me and marrying the dog. I told him the whole idea was crazy, and it wouldn't work anyway because our dog was a boy. He just laughed and said I had no right to comment because I was a cheater, and things are different when it's a dog. Now he set a date for the wedding and invited all of our friends and family, and even co-workers. I don't know what to do. I said I was against the dog wedding on our family Facebook chat and now our family is split. My MIL says I should support her son's decision and I'm being divisive, causing family conflict. My parents think I deserve it for cheating. But I got a private text from my SIL and she completely agrees with me that it's a crazy idea. I'm so conflicted. I don't know what to do. Sometimes I think I should support my husband regardless of the craziness of his ideas because I cheated. But this is really weird. AITA for opposing the dog wedding even though I cheated? Important update. I didn't include this in the story because it wasn't relevant, but I'm pregnant with triplets and I just found out my due date is the same day as his dog's wedding and he won't change the date. Second important update. Since I posted this, my entire extended family, friends and coworkers, who are all constantly on Reddit and have seen my post, have been calling and texting constantly on both sides. You might say my phone is blowing up over this. Story 6. My girlfriend said I can't go to the club with her. How do I reveal I went through her phone? My girlfriend, female, 24, and I, male, 23, have been together for almost 4 years now. They have been the best 4 years of my life and I genuinely love her so much. We have talked about getting married and I can't wait to do it. We have been living together for the past couple years and a few months ago even bought a house together. This relationship has been amazing from start to finish. Obviously we have our occasional disagreements, but what couple doesn't? I have never had any inkling of infidelity or anything like that. She enjoys going to the club from time to time and usually goes with her friend. I don't mind and I like for her to do things she enjoys. Recently, however, her sister has been going through some issues with her boyfriend and while before they haven't been particularly close, my girl has been helping her sister through some tough times. This includes a recent trip to the club with her sister, 2 cousins, both male, and one of her cousin's friends, male. One cousin is from far away, so him being in town was the catalyst for them all going out together. Again, I don't really care and I am happy she is hanging out with her family having fun. I usually don't enjoy going out to the club, I am not a big drinker and just not really my scene. As a result, I don't usually go with her. This doesn't bother me as it gives us a chance to have a little time to ourselves. However, after this trip I told her that we should go out next weekend. I just thought it might be fun for us to go out as I don't often do it. She agreed it would be fun. However, a couple days ago she mentioned her cousin was flying back out here for the weekend and if he could stay at our house. I said yeah, I don't mind. Then later that night she mentioned that the same group as before was going to go out again this weekend. I was like, this will give me a chance to meet them and hang out with them since I had told her I wanted to go out this weekend also. What she said next is where things started to go wrong for me. She was like, oh no, I don't want you to come with us. This shocked me and I kind of went quiet and then told her I was going to go to bed. I went upstairs, but before I was able to fall asleep she caught on that she had hurt my feelings and came up to talk to me. She went on to say that the reason she didn't want me to come was because her sister was having a lot of trouble with her boyfriend and she didn't want us to be together in front of her dancing and rubbing our relationship in her face. I said that I guess that made sense, but I was still a little upset that she ditched our plans to hang out with them. I pretended I was all good, but inside this was eating me up. I couldn't shake the feeling that there must be some other reason that she doesn't want me to come. This prompted me to go through her phone. I guess it's not smart, but I had to find some sort of answers. I noticed that she had deleted texts from that group chat with everyone in it and so I restored them. Again, probably not smart, but I had a feeling there was something in there if she deleted them. When reading through it all seemed pretty normal, nothing out of the ordinary. However, then I got to a conversation about New Year's. Her sister said to the chat, "What are we doing for New Year's?" Someone mentioned they should rent an Airbnb and throw a little party, but it would be difficult because my girlfriend is in a relationship. My girlfriend then responded, "I would say we could do it at my house, but that can't happen." Then she also said, "If you guys do something, I just gotta make sure I leave him at home." This text was then reacted to by her cousin's friend with a laughing emoji. This text broke my heart. I started sweating and shaking. I didn't know what to do. I then noticed she had a new best friend on Snapchat, and it was the cousin's friend who was a part of this chat. They had a 7-day Snapchat streak. This now made me think maybe something was going on with them. Far from a smoking gun, I wasn't sure how to proceed. I wanted to confront her, but worried if I revealed that I went through her phone that she would just deny anything happened and then hide her actions better in the future and I would never find out what really is happening. So I talked to her about how I still was thinking about how she doesn't want me to come and how I wanted to know if there was any other reason for that. She still kept saying it's just that she doesn't want her sister to feel like there's a happy couple being shoved in her face. I prodded further, saying it didn't seem to me like this was the only reason. She then became very defensive. So you are calling me a liar? I maintained that it wasn't that, it was just that I can't stop thinking about it, and it seemed like there may be another reason other than that. She then was like, it seems like you are worried about my cousin's friend being there. I had not said anything about him up to this point. This further made me suspicious. Now I don't know what to do. Without clear evidence of anything, I feel like she would just deny and then go back to saying, I can't believe you think I am lying. She is supposed to go out with them tomorrow and this is still eating me up. Do I try confronting her again and reveal what I found on her phone? Story 7. AITA for telling my mother-in-law if she keeps rearranging my kitchen she can get a hotel room. I, female, 29, am married to a wonderful man, 30, who is also the brother of my best friend. Our heights are very different, with me being 6'6" and him being 5'7". All of his family are on the short side, and it led to some adjustments in our living arrangements at first, but we found what worked for us. We realized early on that it was easier for him to use a step stool to reach what he needed in the kitchen than for me to constantly be crouching to get what I need, as that gets painful quickly for me. This was fine, until my mother-in-law came to stay with us 2 weeks ago. Her roof needs repairs, my husband and I have a spare room while my best friend doesn't, so it was only logical she come stay with us. She has constantly been moving things about in the kitchen, lowering items as she doesn't want to use the step stool, which isn't anything to do with her age or fearing she'll fall if she just doesn't want to. She keeps harping on about how it's ridiculous everything is so high up and it's rude for guests. My husband has repeatedly shut her down, stating my comfort matters more than theoretical guests, and asked her not to move things. She lets it go for a day, then things are moved again. I've expressed frustration to my husband about this, and the final straw came today when I went to make myself a coffee and could not find my coffee mugs anywhere. It took me 5 minutes to find them in my kitchen, and I found them in the lower cabinet that I had to kneel to get them out of. I was angry and snappish at this, as my back had hurt from getting my mug, and I told her if she couldn't stop herself from rearranging my kitchen she could get a hotel room, as I have had enough of her entitlement. This led to a lot of blustering and some tears that she was just trying to make it make more sense, and how this is her son's home and how it's just a little reorganization and that they shouldn't all suffer just because I'm tall. She then also began to say how I'm heartless to expect her to stay in a hotel over the holidays. My husband was clearly uncomfortable at this and didn't want his mother upset, but he told her that it wasn't just his home, but mine too, and if she wouldn't respect my comfort and happiness then she would have to leave. She has gone into the guest room and I can hear her crying still. My husband is clearly getting anxious and upset over this, but he's not backing down, and I feel awful that my snapping led to him feeling like this. Maybe I should have just put up with it or been more gentle about how I dealt with it. I honestly don't care that she's upset, which may make me sound heartless, but I hate that my husband is feeling this way. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give a like, share it with someone, and subscribe for more stories that inspire, provoke, and connect us. Thank you.